Jay here for Stretford Paddock. This is Academy Review. It's slightly different this week. We've decided to do it live because there's so much to talk about, and we wanted to get your interaction as well. We thought, you know what, rather than doing a pre-record, we're going to go live, we're going to chat to you lot, but most importantly, we're going to chat to Finn, Academy Scoop. Finn, good to see you on the channel as always.
Very good to be on, it's always a pleasure.
I mean, it's a bit of a funny one because we could be sat here now talking about how loads of Academy players got their debut against Spurs and how it helped us get a win and it was all wonderful, but we're not. We are going to get to the under-21 and the under-18 games in a bit. But first of all, I want to talk to you about Sunday's game against Spurs because, if I may, just sort of go through it in a sort of timeline sense of things. What was your initial reaction when you saw all the injuries that we had and you saw the bench for Manchester United? Because anyone doesn't know who Academy Scoop is, and Finn, then I don't know where you've been, but he basically covers the Academy games, has broken a lot of Academy stories, including the fact that United signed Chido, Obi. So what did you think when you saw the bench and you saw what was happening there?
Yeah, so I mean, I got the news on Friday evening that basically the whole Academy are on the bench. This is what's happening. Everyone's injured. It's a massive disaster. A lot of them are going to be playing for the 21s against Fulham, but Ruben Amorim said, well, we've got no one else, so we'll bring along the whole of the 21s. And at first it was something that, you know, showed promise of being a very important day for Carrington and for the Academy. You know, to have 8 out of 9 of the members on the bench be from the Academy, or at least play for the youth teams. Obviously, Chido, Obi and Sekou Kone, I don't know if we're claiming them or not. Oh, we will anyway, but
100%.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
But yeah, so it could have been a fantastic day where we see a few debuts made. We're introduced to new players, or at least, you know, those who aren't familiar to them. It could have been a really exciting day in that sense. And Ruben Amorim is someone who so far hasn't utilised the youth a lot, but at Sporting, that was one of the main things that he was known for. I think he brought through 27 players at Sporting.
Crikey.
And, you know, was really intent on using the youth if he deemed them available, you know, ready to contribute. But obviously it didn't go like that, and I think it was frustrating and disappointing.
Frustrating and disappointing sounds like my school report.
Yeah.
Make sure you're hitting that like button, please, people. Give us a like. Let us know what you think. Obviously, this is live, so it's slightly different. We will get into some of your chats as well. As the game went on, at what point were you, as a fan and as someone who's watched these Academy players and knows a lot about them, expecting or wanting to see someone come on? When did you think, right now, I want to see someone come on, and who was it, if indeed you did?
I think there were a few stages of it. I think
please take your time, talk us through it.
At first, I thought, well, Casemiro is not going to last a 90. No. He might not even last 60. You know, because he just doesn't have the legs anymore. Also,
that booking, was it first half booking as well? Yeah,
first half booking.
I mean, I thought his days were numbered then.
We know what he's like. That could be, you know, an easy red card coming.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe 60, 65 minutes we'll see someone brought on. If it were to be Casemiro that was taken off, I think the obvious replacement on that bench would be Sekou Kone, just in terms of profile and position. So that's what I thought at first. Maybe 60, 65 minutes we see the first one come on. Obviously got to that point in the game, nothing. And I was thinking, okay, maybe it's going to be a bit later than we thought. Maybe, you know, 70, 75 minutes, because, you know, you don't want to have them on for too long, because then maybe they make it, you know, if you give them too much time, maybe they'll make a mistake and it will look bad on them and hurt their confidence. So, okay, 70, 75 minutes we see them. And it got to then, and it got to 80 minutes and still nothing. And I think Samuel Luckhurst said at the time that a lot of them were warming up. And then at around 80 minutes, I think, Amorim called them all back and said, no, put your tracksuits back on, sit down. And I think it became clear at that point, Christ, maybe no one's going to come on. And I think anywhere past, you know, 85 minutes, it becomes the case where you just say, well, what's the point in bringing any of them on? Because what we saw happen with Chido Obi, where he comes on, he's got 3 minutes to try and make an impact. He gets no touches on the ball because there's no service going to him. What kind of message does that send in terms of how he's valued by Amorim? And you know, I just feel like it's almost more insulting if you're going to give them such a small window to actually have an impact. So yeah, I thought it was a strange decision. I think if you get to that point, you're at 90 minutes, you haven't brought any of them on, leave it for another game. Because the opportunity's kind of gone at that point. And it's weird because in the post-match press conference he was talking about the way Chido can have an impact on the game. He was saying about how smart he is in the box, picking up loose balls and, creating opportunities for himself. And then he didn't reflect that in the amount of minutes that he gave him. So it was a bizarre decision, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm going to get into some comments in a minute. I agree with you. We was on the watch along, and me and Joe slightly differed. I think he got it. He got my point.
Yeah.
I think Joe was like, well, I don't think he should have brought on a load of youngsters, which I kind of agree with. I get it. You've got to remember as well, United were in the game.
Yeah.
It wasn't it was a poor team we were playing against, but it wasn't a completely abysmal performance where you go, Jesus Christ, just get some players on, get rid of some of these. You thought, okay, we've got a puncher's chance here of getting something out of this game. So I understood the idea of just sort of sticking with the team that he had. Mm-hmm. And also understood the idea of just bringing Chido on. The thing that annoyed me and rattled me a little bit was like what you just said, exactly the same page as you, the 3 minutes. Because I think 3 minutes, it's almost counterproductive. You might even not get a touch because you didn't. I think when he brought him on, I think Spurs had a free kick, so it wasn't even, we were in possession where you can go, okay, we've got the ball, give him a touch straight away. We weren't, we were defending a free kick. Then you've got that whole thing that if he's got 3 minutes, it's probably going to take him it would take him longer than 3 minutes just to get into the game, just to get, sort of get used to the pace of the game. And if a chance did fall to him, I know he's an extremely talented youngster, but if he's only got 3 minutes, he might snatch at it. His touch might be slightly off because he's
takes a minute to get into a game.
Yeah,
anyway,
so I just thought I'm not really into that. I would have liked to have seen him come on at the latest, sort of 85 minutes at the very latest. That I probably would have given him 15 minutes, to be honest with you. So 80 minutes, 75, 80 minutes, get him on, and then hopefully he can do a Kiko Makeda or something and get us a goal. But it wasn't to be. I'm going to get into some of the chat and then I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Abhinav Verma says he should give the youth a chance, but people going hyperbolic, I reckon he will give them a chance. Personally, wanted at least 10 minutes given. Santa Notch says Obi now has first team experience of looking at grass. Well, that was it, wasn't it? It was like the old Martinelli meme. Nomad Joe says no subs until 90 was just ridiculous. A fool named Huggy says bizarre is an understatement. Heaven Soul says you just summed it up, LMAO. The idiots on the pitch couldn't get a single pass beyond the halfway line, let alone Chido Obi. The rest of the players were hindering everything. When you were looking at it, when you thought, okay, you mentioned Sekou Kone there as being the obvious one for Casemiro, is there anyone else you think that could have made a difference? I don't want to get too hypotheticals because we know what happened, but I'm just curious as if we were in a similar situation again. Is there someone there that you're looking at and thinking, do you know what, there's a player that could make a bit of a difference?
For me, that player, even above a Chido or a Sekou Kone, is Jack Moorhouse. Right. I've been singing his praises for weeks now. You have. And although he's spent a lot of time out injured and hasn't actually got a lot of experience under his belt, the performances that he's put in for the under-21s this season have just been outstanding. Even against first team opposition, albeit National League or League One, League Two, against teams like Oldham, it still says a lot about how ready he is physically. He's probably the best athlete in the under-21s. He looks kind of tactically and technically one of the more ready players, and he scored a fantastic solo goal against Spurs under-21s just in the last couple of weeks, and he's a profile that would fit perfectly for one of these number 10 positions. He's a great ball carrier, he drives his team forward, and I just think with what was on the pitch, yes, we were creating chances and it didn't look like we were completely out of the game, but a player like that can come in and add that finishing touch. That chance that Garnacho had where he made a fantastic run, which he always does, but then he completely skies it. I'd like to think someone like Moorhouse has shown on a lot of occasions that he does have the quality to finish those kind of chances. Not to say that he would every time or that he could just step into the first team and be the finished article, but give him a chance. You know what I mean? I think it's kind of senseless to just bring them all along, get them that close to actually having an opportunity while we're losing, and then not give him any minutes. So Jack Moorhouse was the obvious one for me that I was thinking, how have you not put him on here? And especially, I think we've got to think about what the club represents and what we expect of Manchester United managers. I think Sir Alex said that, as long as a player is given a chance, the club will always make sure that they're looked after. And so we often say, oh, what if they make a mistake? What if they don't play well? But the environment is meant to be one that kind of facilitates young players getting their chances and not being under pressure and worried about making mistakes, because the rest of the team steps up to help them, and clearly we don't have that luxury at the moment. So I think it says a lot about the situation we're in, because obviously maybe if we weren't in the absolutely dire state that we're in the league, you know, we're 15th now, and if Amorim wasn't under so much pressure, maybe we would have got a chance to see a lot of them. So I think it's easy to point blame at different people, or maybe Amorim, and say, you know, what are you playing at? Why didn't you bring any on? I was definitely frustrated in the moment, but upon reflection, you know, you can understand the arguments and the reasoning that he would have had. So I think the wider picture is actually just the state of the club right now, because it's not very Manchester United what happened.
I think that's a good point, that, because I do feel that there is a responsibility as manager. You have to look after these youngsters properly. So whilst I wanted to see Chido get a few more minutes, and I thought the 3 minutes thing was a nonsense, I know you love him, and I get you what, you know, exactly the point you made about not giving Moorhouse or anyone more minutes, because I also think as well, some of these players, when I looked at that 11, let's not kid ourselves here, this wasn't a completely makeshift 11 of players you've never heard of. This was senior, experienced footballers, some of whom are on 300k a week.
In fact, pretty much the whole 11.
Yeah. So they should be able to play against the Spurs team, which is utter garbage. Let's not forget. This is a Spurs team that's having one of its worst ever runs in Premier League history. And, you know, we didn't make them look that good, to be fair. But you look at that 11, you think, okay, I get it. I get why you're not going to bring on others, because that 11 you've sent out should be able to do it. Yes, you're missing Mainu and Ahmad and Yagate and even Collier. I say even because I think if everyone's fit, he doesn't start, but he would have started with Yagate being out. But there's still enough players there, enough quality, enough experience for them to be able to get over the line. The sort of issue was the sort of almost doing it. It's like it felt was neither here nor there. If you give him 15 minutes or don't give him any, but to give him 3, and I've seen a few people in the chat saying, well, Casemiro's on a yellow. He'd been on a yellow for an hour. Mm-hmm. He could have done another 3 minutes on a yellow card. I don't think that was I've got to get him off now, because
now is the time we get him off.
He was knackered, I get that, but I think you could have done him a little bit more. We'll get into some chats, and I want to ask you a little bit more about the game before we move on to the under-21s and the under-18s. Neil Crowd says, would you give Chido minutes against Everton?
My worry is that now that this has happened, players are going to come back into the squad, and suddenly we're not going to see any of these players on the bench for a long time. So my hope is that at least Chido and maybe a couple of others get to at least be in the squad against Everton. And now that he's been kind of put in front of some of the other players and got his small chance, albeit 3 minutes, now I'm hoping that he will be able to come on in the next game and start building momentum, and maybe 3 minutes becomes 5 minutes, the next game 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes, and we can have a nice kind of planned gradual integration rather than chucking him in, because then that actually backs up Amorim's reasoning in the first place. You know, then you can say, right, well, now I understand why he didn't give a chance, because he wants to do it gradually, let them bed in slowly and get up to speed at their own pace. And so I hope that that's the case, that he will get minutes. But my worry is now, because the only long-term injuries are, well, obviously Lissandro, Ahmad, and Mainu's out for 4 to 6 weeks. But apart from that, a lot of these players are either ill or they've just got a knock and they're going to come straight back into the squad. And so unfortunately for a lot of these under-21 players, they're not going to see the squad again for months. If, you know, you worry if you'll see any of them or some of them ever again, because...
Well, it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we did one of the great moments for many United fans. I remember Adam McCullough doing a great video on it, was when Zidane Iqbal made his debut, the first British South Asian to represent Manchester United, which is ludicrous, by the way. It was only recently that happened, but this is where we're at. And we barely saw him again. I think that was his only... I know he played in friendly, but that was his only thing... sort of competitive game. So you're right, you know, you don't know, do you? I just want to get into some of the chat in the comments, and I'm going to ask you one final thing before we move on. There's quite a few comments. Thanks to everyone who's commented. Make sure you hit that like button. It's Hoyland says, Finn has more sense than most of the pundits and YouTubers. The young man deserves a lot of respect. Yeah, I get that, and I like the fact that you're wearing your heart on your sleeve, Finn. You're always sort of reasoned, but you give your opinion when, you know, as much as anyone, and I think you've explained yourself very well as to how you felt, and I think a lot of people share that frustration. Permanent Merker says Moorhouse is ready now. His granddad Bob knew his way around a game show too. I think you're thinking of Bob Monkhouse there. Santa Notch says ultimately we don't know exactly how ready they are, but there's no way none of them were at all ready, and we had so little to lose.
Using the word ready is interesting because are these first teamers ready? What does ready mean?
No,
because if the first teamers are playing this bad, losing almost every game in the Prem, and we're 15th.
Well, they're not.
Are they ready to play for Manchester United?
Do you know what it is? I think you make a good point about the whole we'll see. We will see further down the line how this all works out. And if you look at it and you go, Chido, we're all, I'm a fan, I'm not a coach, I'm not someone. As a fan, I want to see, we're losing, I want to see something change. And the youngster that can't stop scoring, I want to see him on that football pitch. Now, the manager might have a long-term goal where he's like, look, that's counterproductive to what I envision happening in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. We will see that. Sometimes, managers get it right in that respect. Like you said, we saw it far too often at United where players are thrown in. Ilanga is a big one for me. I liked Anthony Ilanga.
Yeah, me too.
Your predecessor on this show, although he's not left, he still chats to us.
You were saying Ilanga was my predecessor on the show.
Dave Pritt, when we used to the Academy Review, he used to talk about Ilanga a lot. Great in the Academy side. Had a trademark finish, cutting in, banging it top bins. Gets his debut, does okay. I think it was against Leicester. A few other games, I think he scores against Southampton, scores against Leeds. I was in Madrid when he scored there. And then he just played constantly until his confidence is gone. Out of position. The team's struggling. He's struggling. Then when Rangnick leaves, he's still at the club. He gets 2 minutes, 3 minutes here and there. It just doesn't look like the player that we'd seen in the academy. Eventually goes to Forest and gets his career going again. I just don't think United handled him in the right way.
No.
So there could be an argument that, look, this is what we're trying to do. And we saw it, I don't say this very often, for Mikel Arteta deserves a lot of credit, and let's get your take on this. The way he handled Ethan Nwaneri, I thought was quite good, because remember he made his debut, didn't he?
He made his debut at 15, didn't he? And then he didn't really see the first team for a while after that.
And I remember thinking, because I don't watch Arsenal and don't watch the Academy, I know you've been watching him, you'd seen him a few times, and I was like, was that a bit performative by Arteta? Was that, I'm going to break the record, I'm going to do that, you know what I mean? But then you look at it, okay, he gave him his debut, I think they were 3-0 up or something against Brentford or wherever it was, and then took him out of it, then he's brought him back in, and you look at him where he now, I can't fault the way they've integrated him into that team, because he looks unreal.
Yeah. So
there was obviously a plan there, and it looks like it's coming to fruition, because the kid, he looks like one of their best players at the minute.
Yeah, I think it's rare that we see a United youth player integrated in that way.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately the only one that comes to mind is Mason Greenwood.
Yeah,
in terms of a player that was brought in slowly and without being the result of injury or other absentees. Maybe Mainu, kind of similar. He wasn't dropped straight in it.
Yeah. You're right, because I mentioned Zidane, but I remember him and Charlie Savage in pre-season tearing it up. And then he kept seeing Mainu in the squad ahead of them when they weren't even getting on the bench. Yeah. And I was thinking, why is that?
I had a lot of arguments with Twitter fans saying, hey guys, I understand the frustration, but I promise you Mainu is the one out of this lot.
Really?
And I understood, because you see Zidane and Savage doing so well, and then suddenly this other kid that you've never heard of is ahead of them. And I understand why that was frustrating. But, based on what a lot of people who had watched Mainu had seen, it was quite obvious, like the hierarchy of talent there.
Right. Well, I mean, you can't argue with it, because Kobe Mainu, and I loved what I saw from Zidane and Charlie Savage.
And he's started doing brilliantly in the Netherlands. So
yeah, we spent some time with him on tour, and he's a top lad.
Yeah.
Top lad. I wish him the very best, and he'll always have that be a big part of Manchester United's history.
Definitely.
Just before we do move on from the Spurs game, I know he's not an academy player, but he's a young player, and we've spoken about him before. What did you make of Patrick Dorgu getting 90 minutes? What do you make of his performance? You probably saw the clips going viral about Garnacho ignoring him.
Yeah,
everyone was talking about.
So frustrating because,
what did you make of it all?
Well, for the first time this season, maybe you've got a left-footed left wing back who is providing an overlap. He's showing himself for the ball time and time again, and he's just been completely ignored. It wasn't even just Garnacho. It seemed like the whole team at
there was De Ligt at one point where he was just clear. Yeah. Right there in space with a giving, and he sort of De Ligt turned, didn't he, and then kicks it out into out for a throw-in.
This is what we keep going back to in terms of the intelligence of the squad and the decision making. Some of these decisions just make no sense, and it's easy to say watching from the sidelines and not being a player, but some of these decisions you think a 5-year-old could make.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we've got this profile that we've been crying out for, and then the whole team aren't actually taking advantage of it. And the times that he did get on the ball, I think he picked out really intelligent passes. He always looked positive. Defensively he was all right, made a few good tackles and got stuck into his duels, and he looks like a good athlete, like we knew, and he looks physical, and he looks like he can keep up with the pace of the Premier League. And so I thought it was a really positive showing from him, but again equally frustrating, just because you've got what you kind of need on the left side now to progress and to be impactful in the final third, and you're ignoring it.
No, I agree with what you said. I was impressed with Dorgu. I thought it was a solid performance. I know Spurs are struggling, but it's not easy. Sort of coming into a club like Manchester United, the expectation that goes with it, going to a place like Spurs Stadium, coming up against a team who on their day have got some very, very good...
Still a team with a lot of quality.
A lot of quality there, absolutely. And I thought he acquitted himself well. Yeah. And I'm hoping that Ruben Amorim has a word with him and says, look, goes through it all with him and says, look, this is a player that you've got to utilise. This is what he's in the team for. And there's too many players that just have their heads down all the time and aren't sort of finding those passes. And I'll be honest with you, at the time I didn't notice it as much until afterwards, because I was sort of a little bit annoyed with some of what I was seeing from Manchester United. I think we should have been a bit better. But then when it sort of dawned on me how many times he was ignored,
I hope he can keep his confidence up and stick to his game, because sometimes we see new signings come in with a lot of promise, and in the first few games they look really positive, and then the kind of toxic environment of United brings them down to the level that the rest of the team are already performing or underperforming at. And so I hope that he can stick to his game and bring those around him up to his level rather than the other way around.
You're right, because I feel we've seen that a few times, Like, this sounds a bit melodramatic, but I'm going to say it anyway, so we want. Like Sergio Reguilon, when he came in, right, I know it sounds crazy, but he was unreal. Yeah. He was like, he'd get on the front foot, up and down the line. It was like, yes, go on, my son. And then after a few games, he just sort of gave up. Or he wasn't.
I think they become dejected and deflated.
Even to a lesser degree. And I love Mazraoui, but I don't think he's quite the levels we saw when he arrived. Yeah. When he arrived, he was always on the ball. He was always getting forward. He was such a sort of. I use it in the right. I mean it in a positive, a live wire. Yeah. Where you think he's a defender. He's like an attacker.
Players very quickly lose their kind of love and energy playing in this team, and it's no surprise, to be honest. But it's so sad to see. It
is. Loads of comments, loads of love for you as well, Finn. Claire Hayden says absolutely love Finn. So clued up, keep up the great work, pal. I think I've read some of these as well. Someone else said, I can't find it. Someone else said, Finn, the signing of the season. Very nice. Yeah, I mean, not many comments about me. That's fine. Ross Murphy says, Mazraoui's form has fallen off a cliff. First few months of the season, he was really good. He's gone down to everyone's level of being shocking. Brian Casey says, I don't quite think he's shocking, but I don't think he's quite the player he was when he first arrived. I get what you put me your point though, Ross. Brian Case says this summer window is arguably going to be the most important transfer window in United's history. We need to get every signing right and move on the right ones too.
It's a bit scary because you hear about the finances and it feels like this might be one of the last opportunities, if you don't get it right, to spend big.
Yeah.
They need to get it right.
We've got so many transfer windows wrong, haven't we? And I actually think the last summer one was one of our better ones. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I mean,
I think the players the main thing is that the players were valued correctly.
That's a shout.
So if you bought, for example, Højlund or Anthony the summer before for 35 million, then if it turns out that they're not the standard needed, or that they haven't developed as planned, then you can still probably break even or even make a little profit. But if you're spending 70 million on both of them, Anthony 90 million or however much it was, you can't turn a profit on them. You're going to make a loss unless they develop, with like an ideal trajectory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the main thing is, even if these signings of De Ligt and Mazraoui and Ugarte and Xerxes, even if they don't work out as planned, which I'm not saying that's going to be the case because some of them are showing promise.
Yeah.
But you're in most cases going to be able to break even or make a profit. Especially someone like a Mazraoui. You signed him for how much?
14 was it?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
There's no way you can't get that again for even if he's not performing at his best. Xerxes seeming to be one of the brighter players in the final third, and he suddenly looks far more suited to one of the number 10 positions. Amorim said a lot of times he's not a striker, is he?
Was it Xerxes himself said, I think he's on a 9.5 as well.
A lot of people made fun of him for that, but it's true. He's not a kind of natural out-and-out number 9. But yeah, so I think the point is the recruitment needs to stay on that trend of paying the right valuation for players, finding good deals, so that you've got a kind of backup plan if it doesn't go to plan. So you can actually stay financially sustainable if they don't develop as you'd hoped. So,
Notch loved that. Jay wanted love when most of us are wondering where his statue on Lever Street is. Stevenson Square, actually. Abhinav Verma says, lads, controversial opinion, but a transfer is only failed if you can't even sell the player you bought. We can recover money on last 2 season players. I mean, there has been a little bit of a shift, hasn't there, with Ineos into buying younger players with potential sell-on value, if you will. You look at someone like, you mentioned Lenny Yoro, who I think he cost a little bit more than perhaps you wanted to pay.
He cost more, but you'd still think that a Real Madrid would come in for... They'd probably spend 100 on him in a couple of years again if he develops, as we're hoping.
Yeah, 100%. Moving on to the under-21s and the under-18s, We've obviously had quite a few games going on. Who do you want to talk about first?
We'll start with the 18s and the FA Youth Cup. That's the big one to talk about, and the positive one, because the other games weren't as enjoyable. But yeah, so on Wednesday, United hosted Chelsea in the FA Youth Cup at Lee Sports Village. It was the round before the quarterfinals, and United have a really good record against Chelsea in recent years. Actually,
it's the clash of the Titans, that, isn't it, for the academy?
Definitely in terms of the FA Youth Cup.
Yeah, because haven't we won it the most? They've won it the second most.
That's right. Yeah. So we've won it 11 times. They've got 9. I think they won 8 out of the 10 in the 2010s. So because
we Real Madrid did it, didn't we, with the Busby Babes?
Yeah.
Didn't we win like the first 5 or something?
We won the first 5 after 1954, I think.
Yeah, we just because we had some players like some Bobby Charlton or someone, I don't know, it didn't really amount to anything, but players like that who sort of smashed it. So 2 teams with a lot of pedigree in it.
Definitely.
And go on, I'll let you talk about it.
So it's quite refreshing to see that United now tend to be more dominant against Chelsea, because in the 2010s they absolutely dominated the academy scene. We beat them last season in the PL Cup final. It was the National League final, which pits the northern and southern winners against each other. And we'll only ever play them in the cup competitions, because obviously it's the North and South League divided.
I think that's how it should be, personally, but that's just my opinion.
It was a fantastic win for United, and really showed the kind of quality that's in this squad, because when the team sheets came out, I was looking at a few of the names on the Chelsea lineup, and I thought, this could be a really interesting one. I thought it looked quite even on paper.
Yeah.
They've got a few very exciting talents, like Shamara Mweka is a really highly rated striker, signed from Brighton a few years ago. He's made a first-team debut for Chelsea, I think, in the Conference League. They've got Ryan Kavuma-McQueen, who's one of the most exciting young wingers in England right now. A lot of really good players. Keanu Dyer is another one. But as soon as United came out, it was just complete domination in terms of how we played. We penned them right in, we pressed really intensely, so much quality on the ball. We looked after it really well and played it around with a lot of conviction, and it was a really, really encouraging performance to see, because it wasn't exactly how I how I expected it to play out. Chelsea did take the lead early. It was kind of against the run of play. Biancheri was dispossessed in the middle, and they kind of snatched an easy goal, but we really quickly responded, and the big storyline was a Chido Obi hat-trick. That was the...
Chido Obi hat-trick, I mean, that says it all out. Chido Obi, maybe one day we'll see him in the first team. It was 5-1 in the end, wasn't it?
5-1 in the end.
Yeah.
Jaden Camerson played brilliantly. He got 2 assists. James Scanlon with the other 2 goals. Jacob Devaney, the captain, was fantastic. So brilliant performances across the board. And they play Arsenal next at the Emirates on the 28th of February. And that's the quarter-final. So another big game. I will be going,
We'll get your take on that, obviously.
Indeed.
Well done. I love the FA Youth Cup, and if we could win it again,
it's special.
That'd be phenomenal, because I think we have obviously got a great record in it, but over the last 20 years or whatever, we've only won it a couple of times, haven't we?
Creating a nice buffer of wins for Chelsea to catch up on would be good.
It would. Alan Hansen, I don't know, it's the Alan Hansen says you can never win anything with kids, or you can never win things with kids. What about the under-21s? How have they been getting on?
So they played Fulham yesterday in the PL2. It was an unfortunate loss. Fulham second in the PL2 this season, so a very good side. They were really well drilled and kind of defensively compact and well structured. Again, James Scanlon was really bright. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he felt a little hard done by not being included in the squad, because he's had a brilliant season. And
someone pointed this out on one of the comments on the last vid we did.
Yeah,
they were like, James Scanlon's the one that they really love watching. They're a big fan of him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a full international for Gibraltar.
Yeah,
and so
Danny Higginbottom vibes.
Yeah, he's scored tons of goals this season. He's been really impressive. And I think you could see a bit of that in his performance. It was almost like an angry, positive performance where he really wanted to make things happen. But yeah, Fulham were really resolute defensively, and we couldn't quite find the breakthrough. They got a goal in the second half through Callum Osmond, a striker that looks really impressive actually. And yeah, again, Aidan Heaven made his debut.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. Well, it's 45 minutes, I think, was it?
It was kind of a pre-planned substitution at half time for Tyler Fredrickson to replace him. He looked brilliant. He looked, especially on the ball, which is kind of what he's been brought in for. It's why Barcelona and Frankfurt wanted him, because he's seen as a player that fits that mould as like a ball-playing modern centre-back. And yeah, he looked really comfortable using both feet, playing quite daring passes at times, and he looked kind of press-resistant. He uses his body well, lots of kind of small feints and shimmies. And I was really encouraged by his performance. Defensively, like I pointed out when we talked about him signing, he still has some way to go, because he was actually a midfielder by trade for a lot of his developmental years. But that will come with time. He needs to learn positioning and some of the physical aspects of defending, and when to engage and when to lunge in and when to actually stick back. But yeah, I was encouraged by his performance, and he looked confident. So positive to take away from a loss, unfortunately.
Well, we need some positives, and obviously these young players are still developing, and it was good to see him having a positive debut for the under-21s. Joshua Bowater says, what's your thoughts on Rooney? You're going to have to pronounce that, because I'll pronounce. Thank you. Due back from injury soon. Hope he hasn't lost his mojo after almost a year out.
Yeah, he was considered one of the best upcoming attackers in Europe. He was playing first-team football in Sweden at 15. But obviously he did his ACL, I think, at the start of the season. And yeah, really unfortunate timing for him, because I think he was just starting to really establish himself as one of the top upcoming wingers. He scored against us was it the Champions League? Or, Copenhagen, so... Champions League. Yeah, he scored against us. A real kind of live wire, really energetic, pacey, but highly technical winger. Hopefully he can come back, and he hasn't, lost some of that energy and some of that kind of flair. But yeah, really promising attacker.
Good stuff. Finn, we're going to wrap it up there. Appreciate you coming in. Appreciate you.
Always a pleasure.
As always, good chatting to you. We're going to be getting Finn on the channel a lot more, so if you're not doing so, make sure you follow him on Academy Scoop. He's got all the latest Academy updates and everything, broken quite a few stories as well, and hopefully we'll be seeing more Academy players in the first team. Finn, thanks for joining us. That's been Finn. I've been Jay. This has been Academy Review. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.